That would never work in the real world. You hear it all the time when you tell people about a fresh idea. This real world sounds like an awfully depressing place to live. It's a place where new ideas, unfamiliar approaches, and foreign concepts always lose. The only thing that win is what people already know and do, even if those things are flawed and inefficient. This is a mindset that my own father, who happens to be the greatest man I know, would often preach to me. He would convince me to drown myself in practicality, travel down the well-trodden path. My father is someone who started out with 1% of the resources that I've always had, and he accomplished 100 times more than I have. So I've been inclined to listen to him. But nevertheless, I always harbored feelings of doing my own thing, and so secretly, I would devise my own plans. Oftentimes though, my great demise wasn't the plans that I made, but rather I would just get stuck in the planning. I think every creative can relate to this. There's a great safety and delight in planning. You can make yourself feel warm just by fantasizing about what you would accomplish one day and the means you would exercise to get there. But often this is a terrible trap. There are just too many factors that are out of your hands. Market conditions, competitors, customers, the economy. Writing a plan makes you feel in control of things you can't actually control. We've got to consider the fact that all our plans are actually just guesses. No matter how much market research you do, you don't have a business plan, you have a business guess, a strategic guess, a financial guess. There's always that uncertainty and you can't fully mitigate it. You have the most information about something when you're actually doing it. But when do we make our plans? Usually at the start of a project, before we've even begun. In recent times, I've been trying to be mindful of an alternative that helps us stay out of this over-planning phase where nothing actually is accomplished. Every facet of my life has improved when I've done a good job of implementing this new protocol. And the protocol is this: adaptation through rapid trial and error. We can look to nature as a profound example of how powerful adaptation through trial and error is. Ray Dalio in his book Principles says this about it: natural selection's trial and error process allows improvement without anyone understanding or guiding it. The same can be applied for how we learn and progress. There are at least 3 kinds of learning that foster evolution. Memory-based learning, the kind of learning where you just read a book and learn vocabulary words. Subconscious learning, where you have experiences and somehow that knowledge seeps into a deeper part of your being. And lastly, learning that happens through genetic code, through actual biology. I used to think that memory-based conscious learning was the best way to go because that's what we learn in school, that's the model they use, and generally speaking, when you think of learning, you think of actively reading a book. But I've since come to understand and believe that it produces far less rapid progress than experimentation and adaptation. Basically, this philosophy says, give up on the guesswork. Don't make elaborate plans for the year or for the next 3 years. Focus on this week. To the best of your knowledge, to the best of the indications that you have, what are the proceedings for this week and this day? And once you get feedback from this crunch timeline, make new plans and begin again. Figure out the next most important thing to do and just do that. Make plans right as you're about to start doing something, not too far in advance. This isn't to say that we shouldn't plan at all or that long-term plans can't be useful, but recognize that it doesn't take a long time to devise a good plan, a usable start. And great planners who don't execute on their plan go nowhere. Unlike much of nature and evolution, which can only iterate across lifespans, the progressing of one genome as opposed to others, we humans can iterate far more rapidly, at least like in a metaphoric sense. Now there's a second part to this protocol which is also equally as important. If you do buy into this philosophy that the best way to progress is trial and error, then you need a way to process the feedback that you get. Because if you are engaging in trial and error, there's going to be a lot of feedback. In his book Principles, Ray Dalio has a very specific way of defining feedback. If the feedback is deemed useful, then you should define it as a problem. And then there's 2 steps in dealing with that feedback. 1, identify the problem that needs to be solved and resolve not to tolerate the problem. And 2, accurately diagnose the problem to get at its root cause. This all sounds very high level, but you can actually process feedback in this way with almost anything. For example, a recent sketch of mine, Watches Ben Shapiro Once, was unusually poorly received. But around the time that that video went up and all the comments were coming in on it, I was scripting out this video on Ray Dalio's Principles, and so I decided to try it out. This is definitely a very trivial example, but I want to show you that this even works for quick cut comedy sketches. I labeled the feedback on that video as a problem that needed to be solved, and then went about diagnosing how I could solve that problem. The main 2 problems that I pulled out from the feedback was that I did not accurately mimic the personality of the person I was parodying, and secondly, I didn't accurately capture his life philosophy in the jokes that I used in that video. With those problems so coherently defined, and with this commitment that those problems could not be tolerated as per the system, I was able to diagnose them. My diagnosis was that moving forward, I would need to aggressively observe and stress test accents, body language, mannerisms, tics. I would need to commit some time to understand the complexities in someone's life philosophy before parodying them. This is definitely kind of overkill for just like a stupid 2-minute comedy sketch, but at the same time, it would serve as a sort of quality assurance system before I uploaded anything. It's also very important to note, however, that if I had not uploaded that first bad video in the first place and gotten that feedback and then been able to process it, then I wouldn't have been able to find a way to actually become better moving forward. And that's why I think this system is so powerful. Rather than just getting stuck in planning and theory, whose uncertainty we can never get out of, this process actually gives you consistent, useful feedback. And ultimately, that can't help but make you so much better at your craft, whatever it is. If you're new to this channel, my name is Nick Hill. This channel features one comedy sketch, sometimes a mediocre one, every Wednesday, and also a more genuine video like this one every Sunday with topics in mind for creative entrepreneurs. If that appeals to you, consider subscribing. And for those of us who are willing to engage in that trial, error, adaptation, and the processing of feedback, to us I say, greatness is coming. See you Wednesday. Cheers.